I invited my son and his wife for Christmas dinner. Just the two of them. Nothing fancy. I wasn't asking for a crowd or a celebration, just their presence. It was my first Christmas without Leonard, and after 50 years of marriage, the silence in this house had grown unbearable. I needed someone to fill it, even for a few hours. Leonard passed away in March, 74. Good heart, terrible lungs. The doctors said it was peaceful. Maybe it was for him, but not for me. There's nothing peaceful about coming home to a quiet house after 5 decades of shared noise, laughter, habits. There's nothing peaceful about waking up to silence. So I made a plan. I would cook a proper dinner just like I used to. Evan always loved my mashed potatoes with sour cream. Sierra once asked for my green bean casserole recipe, though I'm not sure she ever used it. I spent 2 days in that kitchen, made Leonard's cornbread stuffing from scratch, glazed the ham with brown sugar and pineapple rings, baked pecan pie, brewed sweet tea. I even tried my hand at homemade rolls. They didn't rise perfectly, but they were warm and soft good enough. I bought a real tree too, not one of those pre-lit ones from the attic, a fresh fir. Nearly $100, but I didn't care. Leonard always said it was too much, but he'd smile when it lit up. I pulled out the old ornaments. The red frame with our wedding photo, Evan's macaroni star from 2nd grade, the glass cardinal that shattered in '92 and got glued back together with too much adhesive. I wore the red dress Leonard said made me glow. The one with pearl buttons. Fixed my hair the way he liked it. Put on lipstick. Even pulled out the good china. We only ever used it for Thanksgiving. Dinner was at 3. I had the table set by noon. By 1, the ham was resting, the tea was chilling, the candles were lit, and Bing Crosby was humming from the record player. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Nervous, yes, but hopeful. At 2:30, I texted Evan, "See you soon." No response. At 3, I sat by the window. At 3:15, I checked my phone. At 3:30, I reheated the rolls. At 3:45, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt. I rushed to the door, smoothed my dress, but it wasn't them. It was a courier, young man in a windbreaker, holding a manila envelope. "For Mrs. Evelyn Monroe?" "Yes," I said, confused. He handed it to me and walked away. Inside was a card, Sierra's handwriting neat and looped. "Evelyn, we're so sorry. We decided to spend Christmas at my mom's house this year. It was a last-minute change. Hope you understand. Love, Sierra." No apology. No, we'll come by tomorrow. Just that. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen not to come. I sat at the table, the ham still warm, candles flickering, table set for 3. I lifted a fork, but my throat was too tight to swallow. I couldn't eat. Couldn't think. Just stared at the empty plates across from me. One of them used to belong to Leonard. The other now belonged to no one. Later that night, I opened Facebook. Sierra's mother had posted a photo, dining room packed, glasses raised, food half-eaten. Evan sat next to Sierra, holding her hand, smiling. They didn't forget me. They left me out on purpose. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I hadn't slept much, just lay there in the quiet, staring at the ceiling. The red dress I wore was still draped over the chair. The candles had melted down to stubs. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and disappointment. I didn't bother making coffee. I pulled on Leonard's old flannel robe, the one he used to wear on cold mornings, and stepped outside. The air bit through my sleeves, but I didn't care. The yard was still damp with frost. I walked the stone path to the back garden. The one Leonard always said helped him think clearer when he was stuck on something. I used to laugh at that. Now I understood. I passed the raised beds we used to tend together, then the wooden bench that needed sanding, and paused at the old bird feeder hanging from the maple tree. Leonard used to refill it every Saturday without fail. I reached up to brush off a layer of frost when I noticed something tucked just behind the feeder's roof. An envelope. It was wedged between the wooden post and the roof, a little dusty around the edges but sealed. I pulled it down gently. My hands went still when I saw the handwriting, slanted, neat, familiar. Leonard's. It simply said, "Evelyn." No address. No return label. Just like the birthday cards he used to leave in my coat pocket every February. I stood there for a long moment, holding it. Back inside, I sat at the kitchen table, the same one that had been set for 3 just a day before. I turned the envelope over slowly, then opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no greeting, no closing, just 10 words in Leonard's hand. "If you're reading this, something happened I hoped wouldn't. Go to my desk, the top drawer, there's more." That was it. I pushed back from the table, heart pounding, and walked to Leonard's study. It was just as he left it. The pens lined up, his calculator beside a yellow notepad with scribbles. I opened the top drawer. There, taped underneath the drawer's inside panel, was a second envelope thicker, sealed tightly with folded edges. Clipped to it was a small brass key. I held them both, suddenly aware that Leonard had left me a breadcrumb trail. And whatever I was about to discover, he had seen it coming. I sat at the table for a long time, turning the key in my hand. It was small, brass, worn smooth at the edges. The envelope was thick, sealed carefully, as if Leonard had folded each corner with intention. I opened it slowly. Inside were two things, a folded letter and a legal-looking document. I read the letter first. Evelyn, if Evan ever shuts you out, this will make sense. You'll find everything you need at the place this key opens. It's yours. It always was, you just didn't know it. No signature, no date, just that. The document was a deed. My name was printed across the top. Evelyn Monroe. The address listed wasn't one I recognized somewhere in Blue Ridge, about 45 minutes from Asheville. Leonard had never mentioned owning another property. We had always shared one home, or so I thought. I typed the address into my phone. It wasn't listed anywhere, no rental history, no photos, just a red pin on a blank stretch of road near the mountains. I stared at the map for a moment, then stood up. Within the hour I was dressed, my overnight bag packed with a sweater, flashlight, a thermos of coffee, and a peanut butter sandwich. That was how Leonard always packed for short trips. Take more than you need, just in case. I didn't know what I'd find, but something in my gut told me not to wait. The drive took just under an hour. I passed familiar hills, empty gas stations, quiet post offices, and winter trees stripped bare. I turned off the main road just past a faded hardware store, then followed a gravel path with no sign, no mailbox. I almost missed it. An old white farmhouse with blue shutters and a stone porch stood at the end of the lane. It wasn't run down. It wasn't modern. It just was. Quiet, waiting. I parked in the gravel driveway and climbed the creaking front steps. My hand trembled slightly as I slid the key into the lock. It turned easily. The door opened with a soft click. The air inside was warm. Not heated, but not abandoned either. The entryway had a wooden bench and a coat rack with one jacket hanging, Leonard's old corduroy one. Beside the bench, a pair of his gardening boots lined up just the way he used to keep them. I walked into the living room and froze. On the fireplace mantel were photos, one of me and Leonard at the beach, one from our 35th anniversary, and one I had never seen, Leonard, sitting in a rocking chair on this very porch, holding a coffee mug, looking at peace. Every piece of furniture was familiar, not fancy but ours. The worn lamp with the stained shade. The coffee table Leonard made by hand. A folded note lay in the center. This is yours, in case they ever forget who you are. I sat down and let the words settle. He didn't just give me a house. He gave me a reminder of who I was before I started shrinking to fit other people's comfort, before silence took the place of celebration. He built this for me, quietly, completely, in case the people closest to me ever forgot how to treat me. He knew. 3 days after I found the farmhouse, my phone rang just as I was finishing my tea. The name on the screen wasn't familiar, Walter Benton. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mrs. Evelyn Monroe? The voice asked. It was steady, polite. Older. Yes, speaking. My name is Walter Benton. I was your husband, Leonard's accountant. I sat up straighter. I'd been meaning to call, he continued, but Leonard left very specific instructions. I was only to contact you if something shifted, if things within the family no longer felt right. I didn't have to say anything? He paused for just a moment, and then added gently, I take it something has shifted. I glanced at the envelope Sierra had sent, the one that arrived with a courier instead of her presence. Yes, I said quietly, it has. I think it's time we met, he said. There are things your husband wanted you to know. The next morning I drove to Mr. Benton's office in South Asheville. It was upstairs from a bakery, the kind of small, nondescript office you'd miss if you weren't looking. Benton himself was in his late 60s, with neatly combed gray hair and glasses that kept slipping down his nose. But his handshake was firm, his voice clear. Once we sat down, he opened a slim black folder and turned it toward me. Leonard was very methodical, he began. 5 years ago, he quietly moved part of his retirement savings into a separate trust. In your name only. It's not listed in the joint portfolio. My breath caught. Why? Because he believed one day you might need to stand on your own, without interference. He slid a document toward me. There's a little over $650,000 in this account, he said. It hasn't been touched. It was set up to be private, secure, independent. I blinked, stunned. He never told me. He didn't want you to worry about it, or worse, feel guilty for having it. Mr. Benton then handed me a second file. Leonard also kept a record of all financial requests made in the last 10 years. 3 of them stood out, all from your son Evan. The first, in 2015, Evan asked for $25,000 to start a business. Leonard gave it. The second, in 2017, $75,000. Leonard declined. And the third, in 2019, another request, framed as Sierra's dream of flipping houses. Leonard said no again. He feared they'd come to you next, Mr. Benton said, especially once he was gone. I looked down at the folder in my lap. Leonard had planned for everything, even this silence, even this hurt. He hadn't just left behind memories, he'd left protection, quietly, thoughtfully, for the day I'd need it most. I got home from Mr. Benton's office just before dusk. The sky was gray and heavy, the kind of winter sky that made everything feel slower. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a car parked across the street. Evan's. It idled quietly, headlights still on. Sierra sat in the passenger seat, staring at her phone. She didn't look up. I stepped out of my car, clutching my coat tighter against the cold. Before I could reach the porch, I heard footsteps behind me. Mom? I turned. Evan stood at the bottom of the steps, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, his jaw tight. We need to talk, he said. I nodded and opened the door just slightly. I didn't invite him in. I know Christmas was messed up, he began. I waited. Sierra thought it'd be easier to go to her mom's. Things got busy. We didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You could have called, I said quietly. I know. I should have. That's on me. He shifted on his feet. Actually, I came by because I wanted to ask you something. Here it comes. About Dad's paperwork, he said. Some of the old files in the garage. I thought maybe, if you needed help sorting things, financial stuff, I could assist. I tilted my head. What made you think I needed help? He blinked. Well, you've been quiet, and we've been worried. You haven't called in 3 weeks. I know, but it's been hectic. Sierra's trying to get her business going. We're refinancing the rental property. The one in Tennessee, I asked. He paused. Yeah, how did you? Don't worry about how. I stepped out a little more. Just answer this. Did you know Sierra forged my signature on a $15,000 check in 2019? His face changed. The way people's faces do when the lie is no longer useful. He looked away. That was enough. You weren't checking on me, I said. You were checking on what I have. Mom, no. Don't interrupt. He stopped. I know about the trust. I know what Dad did. I know about the requests you made. The ones he turned down. His face flushed. We were just trying to help. Help who? Me? Or yourselves? He didn't answer. I glanced toward the car. Sierra hadn't moved. She's not coming in, I asked. She thought it'd be better if I spoke to you alone. Of course she did. She's probably hoping you'll convince me before I realize how much she's already taken. Mom, you're overthinking this. No, I'm finally thinking clearly. I took a step back and opened the door just wide enough. I don't need help managing anything, I said. I've got everything I need. Leonard made sure of that. His shoulders dropped slightly. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. For the first time in a while, I said, I am. He hesitated, then nodded slowly and walked back to the car. I stood in the doorway and watched Sierra lean in to speak to him. They didn't look back. As they drove off, I shut the door behind me. And this time, I locked it. 2 mornings later, the phone rang just as I was pouring my coffee. I almost didn't answer, but when I saw the name flash on the screen, I picked up immediately. Morning, Evelyn, came the voice of Rosemary Tate, my neighbor of nearly 20 years and the kind of woman who never let gossip slip unless it mattered. Have you heard what Sierra's been telling people? She asked. My chest tightened. No, what now? She's been saying you're not well. That you've been isolated, confused, possibly unstable. I gripped the countertop. A cousin of mine works at the courthouse in Wexler County, Rosemary continued. Says Sierra's been asking about conservatorships. Quietly, of course, trying to build a case. I didn't respond. I just stared out the window at the bird feeder where this all started. She's smart, Evelyn, Rosemary said gently, but not smarter than you. They're not planning for your future. They're planning around it. That hit harder than I expected. Not because it was shocking, but because it wasn't. That afternoon, Rosemary came over with a binder, a laptop, and a fresh loaf of cornbread. "We're not leaving this to chance," she said. "You're going to write it down. All of it. Clearly, legally, unmistakably." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one Evan and Sierra hadn't touched in years, and typed every sentence with care. A formal statement declaring that I was of sound mind, managing my own affairs, and fully capable of making financial and legal decisions. We attached notarized documentation from last month, proof from my doctor, from my church. We left nothing open for speculation. And then, at the bottom, I added one line in my own handwriting. "I am not confused. I am not unstable. I am simply done being treated like an afterthought." We printed 2 copies, signed, scanned, and sent them certified mail, one to Evan, one to Sierra. Rosemary leaned back and folded her arms. "There. Now if they try anything, we'll have receipts." I looked at the envelope sitting in the outgoing tray. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like someone waiting to be included. I felt like someone who was finally drawing a line. And this time, it wasn't in pencil. A week after we sent the letter, a knock came at the door just after lunch. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked the window first, another habit I'd picked up lately. It was Mr. Benton. I opened the door and smiled, surprised. "You didn't call." "I didn't want to," he said, holding up a small, neatly taped box. This needed to be handed over in person. He stepped in and placed it gently on the kitchen table. The box wasn't large, about the size of a shoebox, but it had my name written across the top in Leonard's familiar handwriting. That alone nearly took the air out of me. "Leonard gave me this the week before he passed," Mr. Benton said. "Told me not to deliver it until I was sure you were ready." "Am I ready?" I asked softly. He gave a kind smile. "I believe you are." Then he left. I sat with the box for a long time, hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea, trying to gather myself. Eventually, I peeled back the tape and lifted the lid. Inside was a single item, a dark green leather-bound journal, the kind Leonard used to buy from the old stationery shop before it closed down. It was worn at the edges, the spine cracked with time. I opened it slowly. The first page read, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say all this out loud. So here it is, all of it." The entries began nearly a year before he passed. At first, they were simple weather updates, his thoughts on dinner, memories of when Evan was small. But slowly the tone shifted. He wrote about his fears, not of dying, but of what might happen to me afterward. About how I give and give, but never ask for anything in return. About how strong women grow tired too, and how tired can be dangerous when no one's paying attention. He wrote, "If Evelyn ever sits at our table alone in that red dress, waiting for someone who doesn't come, I want her to know it's not her fault. She is still here, and she is still enough." I closed the journal, tears already slipping down my face, but they weren't bitter tears. They were clearing something out, making space. Leonard hadn't just left behind a house or a trust. He left behind his voice. And finally, I was ready to hear it. 1 year later, on Christmas morning, the house felt different. The silence was still there, but it was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache, but allows space to breathe. I stood in the kitchen, the oven humming softly. The scent of cinnamon, cloves, and roasted sweet potatoes drifted through the air. The table was set, the pies cooling by the window, and Bing Crosby sang gently from the record player. But this time I wasn't waiting for Evan and Sierra. Because this year I invited people who show up. I'd sent out the invitations in early November. Nothing fancy, just cards from the dollar store with handwritten notes. One to Gloria from the quilting club. One to Marcus, who teaches art to the local kids at church. A few more to neighbors, to the boy next door who helps me carry groceries, and to the quiet girl who walks her dog past my porch every morning. They all said yes without hesitation. At 3 p.m., sharp, the doorbell rang, and then it rang again and again. Laughter and voices spilled into the hallway. Coats were hung, boots lined by the door, hats tossed into the basket. A little boy named Isaiah ran straight to the tree. "You got real candy canes," he shouted, his face lit up like magic. Within 30 minutes, the house was full. Gloria told stories about her high school sweetheart. Dishes clinked. Someone knocked over a glass and we all laughed. Someone spilled gravy and no one cared. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The ornaments on the tree weren't store-bought. They were paper stars colored in crayon, snowmen made from cotton balls, names scribbled in shaky handwriting. And they meant more to me than anything that came in a gold box. 3 days earlier, a card had arrived. No return address. Inside it simply read, "Merry Christmas, Mom. Hope you're doing well. Evan and Sierra." No apology, no invitation, just a line. And I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I slid it into the drawer beside old coupons and keys I'll never use again. Because this year wasn't about them. This year I stopped waiting. After dinner I stepped out onto the porch with a glass of wine. The sky glowed pink and gold against the cold. Behind me, the house buzzed with life. Laughter, clinking plates, music, stories. The kind of sound Leonard would have loved. I sat down in his old rocker and smiled. Last year I set the table for people who never planned to come. This year I built a new table. And for the first time in a long time, I belonged at it. If you've ever waited for someone who never showed up, if you've ever set the table, held your breath, and hoped love would walk through the door, this story is for you. Because sometimes the hardest thing isn't losing people. It's realizing they were never really showing up for you in the first place. So we build new tables, with new people, with open hearts. If this story found you at the right time, like, share or leave a comment below. Tell us, when did you stop waiting and start choosing yourself? We'll be reading every word.